good morning. I am Mike. I am one of the pastors here. As I think my name, I did not do the pastor man or something, Fletcher. That was not me. But they liked that title. That's, I guess, going to be my new title, Mike the Pastor Man Fletcher. And we are starting off this series, I Love the 90s. And there's so much stuff I love about the 90s. It was just such a fun time. The toys that we had. We've got these. If you guys don't know what this is, it's in your talk notes. This is a slap bracelet. If you don't know what it is, you weren't around in the 90s to experience them. But there's so many fun things. We had things like Furbies and Tamagotchi pets and this new era of like what toys can do. No longer can you just stare at them, but now they can demonically talk back to you as well. So we had this new era of toys. We had a simpler time when it came to our television program. And television was different then. If you wanted to watch TV, you had to be there. I mean, Thursday nights was Friends and Seinfeld and Cheers, and you didn't have DVRs. You had to show up. That's why it became must-see TV. And then we had TGIF, which was Dinosaurs and Family Matters and Full House. And, these programs that the whole world can be solved by Danny Tanner in 30 minutes, in a little 5-minute moment. And times were simpler then, too. And we weren't as connected either. As a matter of fact, in the early 90s, if I wanted to make a call, I had to walk to a phone that was attached to the wall to a cord, and I had to stay right there. As a matter of fact, I kept buying longer cords for our phones so I could go further and further away from my parents. But then we kind of started to get a little bit unplugged, and we've got some cordless phones. And then something comes out, this bad boy right here. How many of you guys had one of these and rocked that? Yeah, I got the pager on the dad rocking right there. Somebody pages me, I got a page, I got to call them back. And so then we moved from there. We had our first cell phones. And I think this is the size of my first cell phone right here. They weren't little tiny and fit in your pocket. This is the Zach Morris special right here. Call them back. But anyway, so it was a different time. It was maybe a simpler time, maybe a less connected time. But I just love to remember it. And through this series, we're going to have some fun, and we're going to have some cool little 90s giveaways here and there. But really what I'm hoping to do is just take some messages and maybe tie a subject to something. And today, being Father's Day, I thought it was absolutely perfect. You can see I'm rocking the Ben for Tools shirt. You saw the home improvement that we call today Home Improvement. And what home improvement was, I thought it was a perfect Father's Day because Tim Taylor was the perfect stereotypical father. A great heart, really wants to do the best thing for his family and screws everything up all the time. And that's how I am as a dad constantly is I got a great heart, I got great intentions, but I screw things up all the time. Home Improvement was the show that was on TV, if you weren't around then, from about 91 to 99, and that was kind of the premise of it. It had a show within a show where Tim had his own show called Tool Time, but it was a lot of manliness and grunting, and it really just appealed to that. And then, of course, Jill, his wife, is the one that usually fixed everything and saved the day, just like real life. But anyway, I thought that was so fitting for today. Because men, I think as fathers, as leaders of our family, it is our responsibility to step up and be the one that improves our home, that has that home improvement. And that doesn't mean if you're not a father, you can just check out. Because that's not, today is going to apply to so many other areas as well too. It's going to apply to fathers and how we can take our homes and take control of them and improve that environment that we have. But it's also going to improve our relationships with other people. And we're going to look at really improving our relationship with Jesus. You see, we get comfortable in life. We just get comfortable where we're at. We get comfortable with what we do each week. I mean, there's a chance if you were here last week, you're sitting in the same chair that you sat in last week. I made a joke a couple weeks ago, and I said, I think it'd be pretty funny one of these weeks. I'm going to write in the talk notes, hi, Perry, hi, Steve, hi, what, because we sit in the same place each week. And that's okay. I mean, hopefully you'll come back next week. And if you do, you'll probably sit in the same chair. That's okay, because we like comfort. We like things to be the same. I actually had a teacher in college that said, I won't make a seating chart because what I do is I figure out who's sitting where on the first day. And the second day, I kind of check to see who's the same. And by the fourth day, you're going to sit in the exact same place for the rest of the semester. And if you walk in and somebody's sitting in your chair, it's just like church. If you walk in and somebody's sitting in your chair, you're like, whoa, did they not see my name on that? So we do the same things over and over because it makes us comfortable. And we get comfortable in life. And we get complacent with where we are. I mean, think about your last New Year's Eve. I mean, think about New Year's Eve when you were a kid and compare it to your last ones. I remember when I was younger on New Year's Eve, the question was, where am I going to be when the sun comes up on New Year's Day? What am I going to be doing? Where are we going to be at? Hopefully it's not in jail somewhere, but what extravagant adventures are we going to find today? And now we think, man, I don't even know if I'll make it to 10 o'clock on New Year's Eve anymore, Because we get comfortable in what we're doing. We get comfortable in our relationships. We get comfortable with our spouse and just begin doing the same routines over and over. We get comfortable with our children. We begin to take them for granted and just kind of go through the motions of being a parent. And we also get comfortable in our relationship with Jesus. And we show up to church on Sunday, and that may be about it. So if you're feeling like your home life or your relationships or something's just lacking something there, it's time for us to step out and take some bold faith moves. Because we can't begin to experience the joys of relationship until we begin to take bold faith moves. It's these bold faith moves that we're often missing out on in life. See, there's this slide that we have in life, this current that's going to drag us from being brave and bold when you were younger. All those amazing, courageous things you used to do, you begin to slide into this comfortable and boring. It's interesting how we are so brave and bold when we're younger. And we're stepping out often in faith moves. And we're stepping out often exploring where it is. And then we just find these routines. We find that one football play that works, so we just keep running it over and over and over and over in life. And there's something that drags us from having that bold idea that we're going to step out and do into becoming boring and predictable. Think about how you drive to work every day. Or actually, think about how you don't think about how you drive to work every day. Some days you just show up and you look up and it's like, I'm here. How did that happen? I don't even remember turning. It's because you're just on autopilot when you're going to work. And some of us have just turned on autopilot in our life. And we're just going through life with routines. And it's bled into our families, and it's bled into our relationships with other people, and it's even bled into our relationship with Jesus. It's just become bold in the beginning, but it's moved to boring now. We went from being wild to being mild, from being courageous to just being comfortable. And this force that stands in the way of keeping us from making those bold faith moves. See, Jesus wants us to be marked as a people who are making bold faith moves constantly. But everything in life is dragging you the other way. It's the opposite of what this abundant and amazing life that Jesus wants for us is this routine and boring. You might ask the question, why is faith so important in these situations? Why is faith so important? Well, I think that faith is important because if I look at my relationships, if I look at my relationship with my wife, or I look at my relationship with my children, and I want to model what a perfect relationship looks like, the way I should model that is by looking at my relationship with Jesus. If I'm going to put Jesus in the center of everything that I do, Jesus in the center of my family, Jesus in the center of my marriage and my parenting, then I need to begin to model that same behavior of the relationship that I have with Jesus. And if we look at Ephesians 2:8, we can look at how our relationship with Jesus starts. It says, "For it is by grace that you have been saved." So it's not by work. It's not that it's owed to us. It's not that it's something that we deserve. It's not that we're unique, entitled snowflakes and we should get this salvation. But it's by God's grace that we're saved. But it's through faith. So the grace comes from God and the faith comes from you. So that beginning of a relationship with Jesus starts out with faith. Faith is this bold move that you begin to have to start this relationship with God. And then the reason that you continue to have that faith, we see in 2 Corinthians 5:7, it says, "For we live by faith and not by sight." So the people are saved by grace through their faith, and now they continue their walk with Jesus through faith. You have to have that faith to continue to walk, to continue the relationship, because we can't, it's not by sight that we are walking with Jesus, but it's through our faith. We also see in Hebrews 11:16, it says, "And without faith, it is impossible to please God," because anybody who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. So if you want to make God happy, if you want to look at the creator of the universe and know what gives him joy, if you want to put a smile on God's dial, then we need to be a people that live by faith. We need to make bold faith moves. Because outside of faith, we cannot please God. Beyond the miracles that are shown in your life, if you want to see light shown in dark places in your life, if you want to take your situations with possibly, in your family or in your marriage or whatever, and shine light into that, shine light into your school or workplace or street you live on or whatever it is, then we have to live with faith. In Matthew 17:20, it says this. It says, "He replied, 'Because you have so little faith. I tell you the truth. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing is impossible for you.'" If you can draw up that faith, it would be amazing. Your mind would be blown by the things that God can begin to do in your life. So I think with that, it's of the utmost importance that we think about this question. How am I living by faith? How am I making bold moves? What am I doing that's stepping out there in my faith? Are you living by faith? Or are you guided by comfortableness and fear? How is your life marked by those bold moves? When was the last time? Think about that. Just think about when was the last time that I really made a bold faith move? I mean, that kind of move that your spouse, your husband, your wife, a close friend, your parent says, "Are you really sure you want to do this?" And you're like, "I don't know, but I'm just going to step out there. I'm going to take faith and do that." And hopefully, if you think about the last time you really made a bold move, it's not when you ordered the chimichanga instead of the fajitas, because you get the fajitas every time, but you can think about, when did I really do that? I kind of joke about that, but, for some of us, it's been a long time since we've made a bold faith move and stepped out there. The people of God We're always meant to be marked by these bold faith moves. And if you want to walk knowing Jesus, next to Jesus, have a home that is centered around Jesus, then we constantly need to be making bold faith moves. So how do we achieve this? I mean, the question is if I'm supposed to live a life that's marked by bold faith moves, how do I achieve that? In light that there's these gravitational forces, we've talked about that. There's this whole complacency that's going to come across in life. How do I move past that complacency, which is natural? How do I move past that boring? How do I move past that routine and live a life stepping out in faith? How do I stand against those currents of life? And I'm glad you asked that, because that's actually what I'm going to talk about for the rest of today, are those bold faith moves and how we come about doing those. And when I have a question such as this, and I think, well, how do I do this? A great place to look is in the Bible and look for answers. And one of the greatest places I love to read through is the Gospel. And there's a story that we're going to read through in the Gospels. The Gospels are the first 4 books of the New Testament: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. And we're going to read about a guy named Peter, and a time that Peter stepped out in faith. I mean, he literally stepped out. He stepped out of the boat and had faith. So I want to start off here in Matthew 14. I'm going to read this story to you. So it says, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of them to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismantled them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. And later that night, when he was alone, the boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. And the disciples saw him, and they were terrified. They're like, "Man, it's a ghost," they said. And they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. Don't be afraid. It is I." So, Jesus is going, he's walking out there on the water, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's a ghost." And he's like, No, it's cool, guys. It's just me. It's Jesus. I was up on the mountain. I told you guys I'd catch up with you. You took the boat. You went all the way out here, and I didn't have any other way out. So I just figured I'd walk out on, catch up with you guys, but it's cool. Chill out. It's good. It's just me, Jesus. So Peter says to him, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." And then Jesus says, "Come on." Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, and he was afraid, and began to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why do you doubt?" I love this story. I love this text because it's a perfect example of a bold faith move. Here's Peter. He's been journeying with Jesus. And this isn't the first time that Peter made a bold faith move. I mean, Peter was a fisherman, and he was out there fishing, and Jesus came along and said, "Peter, you're going to follow me, and you're a fisherman, and I'm going to make you fisher of men." And Peter said, "Yep, I'm good. Let's go do that." But see, Peter understood this. He knew that his life was not marked by a bold faith move that he made years ago, but he knew that his life was marked by, he knew his life was marked by bold faith moves every day. It's not about what you did 5 years ago or 7 years ago when you took that bold faith move, but it's what you do every day. And Peter understood this. And he said, "I'm going to take this faith move." So they're out there on the lake. It's the middle of the night. There's this storm, and somebody comes walking towards them, and it's Jesus. And Jesus is like, yo, it's me, guys. They're like, "Oh my gosh, it's a spirit. It's something, it's a Furby or whatever. It's coming to get me." But, and Jesus is like, no, it's good. It's me, man. It's just your boy Jesus. I didn't have a boat, so I had to figure out some way out here. And Peter looks at him, and he's like, "Jesus, if that's really you, then come on, call me out there." And Jesus is like, "Come on now, let's do it, So Peter gets out and takes that bold faith move, and he steps out of the boat, and he's able to go across the water. But then he starts seeing the storm, and he starts losing faith, and he begins to sink again. And then Jesus tells him, "You know what? When you have your eyes on me, when your faith is on me, you can do anything." But whenever you start thinking about everything else around you, when you start getting back into that comfort and that complacency, that's when you start to sink. So how do we take this and make our own bold faith moves? If you're taking notes, I have a few things we're going to talk about for the rest of the day. And if you want to, you can get out your iPhones, iPads, iPods, whatever. Take it in the notes section or whatever. Thank you, Steve Jobs. We love you for the beautiful creations you've given us. I will even allow you to use your Samsung devices if you brought them. Usually that's not okay. I'm against that, but I'm just kidding. But no, I think this is so important, what we're going to talk about today. The rest of how we look at making those bold faith moves. That I don't want us to just read this story with our eyes and have this a story that we heard in church today. But really, how can we apply this? What does this mean? How can we look at what Peter did and apply this to making bold faith moves in our own life? So if you're taking notes, the first thing is we need to listen for a word. We need to listen for a word. You see, Peter didn't actually just walk on water. I mean, it's one of those thoughts that Peter didn't walk on water, he walked on a word. I mean, he didn't have the ability to walk on water until Jesus called him out to do that. He said, Jesus, if that's you, call me out. And it wasn't until Jesus said, come on, that he was able to do that. The water didn't change shape. The water didn't turn into ice. It didn't turn into land, whatever it was. But it was because of the word of Jesus that he was able to step out and take that bold faith move. See, we have to realize what separates a bold move from just what is our idea and a move that we want to make and a move that we are deciding is right. How do you tell what's difference between a word from Jesus and just something that's possibly foolish? That's why I'm not going to necessarily challenge you to just run out there and make your own bold faith move, because you need to make it in what Jesus has called you to do. I mean, you might say, I'm going to make a bold faith move and I'm going to strip down to my underwear and climb up to the billboard and write Jesus saves all over it, and the news will come and the media will come and everybody knows that Jesus saves. That's not a bold move. That's a stupid move. That's a stupid thing to do. But how do we know what those bold moves are? What separates a bold move from just a brash, stupid move is a word from Jesus. And that we're able to actually walk on that word. See, some of us are already getting that word, and we know it. Some of us, that word may be that we need to work on some of that home improvement and the things that we need to do. For some of us, it's putting Jesus in the center of our relationship. And where we need to be, we need to start praying with our spouse. Or that you should start reading your Bible with your kids. You know that you're being called to make these bold faith moves, but you're too scared. I mean, what happens if I pray and I sound like an idiot and I don't know what to say? Or what happens if I try to tell my kids some of these stories in the Bible and I don't know the answers to them because I don't know a whole lot about the Bible? And I tell you this, men, I promise you this right now. If you pray with your spouse, they will think that is the absolute sexiest thing that you could possibly do. If you get up there at lunch today after church, and it doesn't matter what you pray it with confidence and pray it, just be like, oh, Jesus, these mashed potatoes look good, and I'm so excited to be with my family, and they will just think that's amazing. Or if you sit down with your kids and you do a devotional with them or read a story to them from the Bible or whatever, have some conversation with them, they are going to think, it doesn't matter what you say or talk about, you can talk to them about the story about Peter, whatever it is. They're going to think that you're the most awesome dad that there ever was to spend that time with them. And for some of us, this is the bold move that we're supposed to be making, but we're too scared. We're too scared to step out. We're too scared to have that faith that's what we need to be doing. Some of us might be thinking, you know what, I really wish I knew what a word from God sounded like, but I don't really know if it's God talking or if it's me talking. And to you, I would say this. Your intimacy that you have is going to depend on your intensity. And by that, I mean, like, if my wife calls me on the phone, of course, we have little caller IDs now on everything you have, and her picture shows up and whatever, I know it's her. But even if somebody hands me a phone and I start talking to her, I'm going to know it's my wife. Why? Because I talk to her every day. I talk to her constantly. If we're in a room with a lot of people and I hear somebody across the room or I hear her across the room talking, I can decipher which is her voice and which are the other females in the room's voice, because I talk to her all the time. And the same is true of Jesus. The more you talk to him, the more you're praying, the more you're reading your Bible, the more intimacy you have, the more intensity you are going to be able to decipher what is a word from Jesus and what is it that I want. The closer you are, the more often you're going to hear him speak. So the first thing what we need to do is we need to listen when we get that word. And the next thing we need to do is we need to take a breath and step out. Take a deep breath and we need to step out. See, this is what happens in this story. We didn't see Peter just sitting there and saying, "Yo, Jesus, call me out." And Jesus is like, "Come on now." And Peter's like, "Oh, no, I'm good. I just wanted to see if I could come out. I just wanted to see if you wanted me to come out." But no. He actually takes the step out. When he hears the word, he steps out in faith. And what I love about the story is whenever he steps out, he doesn't wait for the winds to die down. And he doesn't wait for the storm to subdue. He doesn't wait for the conditions to be favorable. He just steps out. See, I think people miss out way too many times on their miracles that they could have in their life because they're waiting for the conditions to be right. They're waiting for the storm to subdue before they're going to step out in faith. You know, I have 3 kids, and I love all 3 of them tremendously. And I've always said this is my one piece of advice to somebody who's either thinking about having a kid or has just found themselves pregnant. What I always say to them is, if I would have waited until I was ready to have any of my kids, I would have no kids right now. Because I think God will provide a way when we just embrace it. But if I were waiting for the conditions to be right, to have enough money, to have a big enough house, to have the supplies we needed, whatever it was, if I would have waited, I never would have had kids. Because we aren't just waiting for those favorable conditions. It's always worked out. And we do that a lot of times with life, though. With these callings, with these things that are the words we've got. It's like, you know what? I'm going to go out and do missions. I'm going to go out and work for Jesus as soon as I accrue enough vacation time to take off 3 weeks from work so I can get paid for it. Or I'm going to start tithing. I'm going to start doing what I'm supposed to do next as soon as I get a bonus, because I'm supposed to get a good bonus and then I'll pay off some bills and then I'll be okay. Or I'm going to start praying with my family, or I'm going to start praying with my wife, or I'm going to start working on those reading Bible stories with my kids as soon as I show up to a few more weeks at church and get a little bit more comfortable about it. But we're waiting for these conditions to line up before we step out. But then where's the faith? If we're waiting for everything to be perfect, there's not faith involved in our stepping out. So I would challenge you today. I would truly challenge you that if you know what your word is and you're possibly waiting for those conditions or what that next thing is to do, I would have a conversation with Pastor Perry, have a conversation with myself, have a conversation with one of our wives, one of the people from the pastoral care team, because we are here to do this together. And sometimes it just takes somebody along your side. We're here to encourage you to begin to step out in faith. That's why we all show up here. You know, like, I hate roller coasters, okay? I know y'all, where is he going with this? He's talking about church and then roller coasters. I hate roller coasters. I have this deal with my youngest son. And I said, if he wants to go on a roller coaster, I will go with him. Because he doesn't like them as much as me. Although I think he's starting to like them, and now I'm scared. But anyway, but because we need each other in order to do that. For me to step out in faith, which it takes a lot of faith to get me on a roller coaster. For me to step out in faith, I need him to be on board with that. And that's how we are as a church. This is why we show up here. We don't just show up here to listen to me talk, although it's incredible every week what I have to say by the amount of laughs I've seen who's listening. But anyway, Now, I'm not that arrogant, really. But no, we need each other to become better fathers, to become better mothers, to become better spouses, to become better parents, to become better friends, and to have a closer relationship and walk with Jesus. And so if you feel like you're being called out, if you know what your word is, if you know what you should be doing next, but it's hard to do that, it's hard to step out in faith, come talk to us, and we will encourage you. We will guide you as best we can. Sometimes we'll just follow up and help you, but we need to be ready to step out and stop waiting for the conditions to be 100% favorable and for the storm to subdue. The last thing that we need to do is we need to keep on moving. So we need to, once we hear a word, and then we step out, we got to keep on moving. It's one thing to step out in faith, but it's a whole different thing to keep on moving. To keep stepping and walking in that faith. It's one thing to step out and do something brave, but when the winds and the waves are coming, it's real easy to lose sight of what you're trying to do. Turn around, run back to the boat, sink to the water, or in the water, cry out, Lord, help me, I can't make it anymore. See, when Peter kept his eye on Jesus, when he kept his eye on the Word, when he kept his eye on what he was supposed to have faith in, he was able to levitate above water. But the moment that he lost sight of Jesus, when he lost sight of that word, is when he began to sink. And this is what happens to us so much as we're sitting here in church. We hear this word. We hear God speak to us, or we hear Jesus speak to us. He says, here's what you're supposed to do next. And you're like, all right, we're going to do that, and I'm going to rally the troops, and I'm going to take a step, and I'm going to take a stand. And then we go out into life, and we begin our routine. And we just start doing the same thing. We go back into autopilot. And so we begin to take that bold faith move, and we might step out, but then we just start to sink. We take our focus off of what Jesus has planned for us and put our focus back on the comfortable and the normal and the common. We forget that we're not a people that are supposed to be common. But God made us a people that are marked by making bold faith moves. We must not only step out, but we have to keep moving. Because the abundant life and the amazing love that Jesus wants us to experience is found on the other side of those bold faith moves. I'll pray with you guys as we close out today. Jesus, I love you so much. Lord, as we go into this series and just have fun talking about the 90s, I hope that you can continue to just put a word in our heart, that we would understand what that word is that you want from us, what that thing is, that we would be able to listen and hear what you want us to do to step out in that bold faith move. That we cannot be known as a people that did something 3 years ago or 5 years ago or 2 years ago, but we can be defined by the bold faith moves that we are willing to step out and take every day. Whether it's a bold faith move to put Jesus in the center of our family, or a bold faith move to start serving you differently in full-time missions, or a bold faith move to make a difference in this community by how we choose to serve. Whatever it is, Lord, that you can be there to not only make those bold faith moves, but secondly, that you can allow us to be a church that supports each other in stepping out. That we would be comfortable enough to have those conversations with each other. That we would be drawn closer to you, and therefore we would be more willing and able to be your hands and feet as we're walking next to you the whole way, as we put our faith in you, as we put our trust in you, as we put our love in you to help us step out and make bold faith moves, that we could be known as a people that is defined by bold faith moves. Jesus, I pray this in your glorious name. Amen.